I'd like to call the meeting to order tonight. And first up, we're going to hear from our wonderful student representatives.
Okay, so at the middle school, we have just started a new trimester, and we are on our 5th round of UAs, which all started March 18th. And also on March 18th, we had MEA testing, which was not fun. And that took place Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And so we had the math, the reading, and the language and writing. And then on March 29th and March 30th, so already happened, the drama program put on a production of a play titled I Am. This play has profiles of different kinds of students and adults who work in schools, and it was an original screenplay written by music teacher Mr. Scarponi. And then the spring sports just started on Monday. The District Music Festival is on Saturday, April 6th. And some of the German kids just went to a thing called Sprockfest today. So they got to be mixed in with year 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. And they did Giant Kahoot, and we did STEM challenges, and then we did a break box, and you earn points towards your team the entire time. And I think we're on to teams.
On Acadia, students are learning about the history of immigration and about slavery in America. In Mrs. Corrigan, is that right? Core class. In Mrs. Rosner's core class, students are reading excerpts. Yes, I know. From the middle school play I Am, and writing an essay about who they are.
On Katahdin, one class was participating in March Madness, where the 8th graders would do a week-long research project that they would collect the colleges of interest and put them on their own bracket and go off of it. And then the 6th and 7th graders were exploring bracketology. And the students and teachers were regularly checking their brackets to see where they stood. And then they have their wilderness survival class, where they have been discussing the fundamentals of being in the outdoors. They are doing common sense decisions, survival kits, and working on a mini project where students were given a basic emergency wilderness scenario. And they had to explain how to solve it, and then using laptops, students had to prepare a short slideshow presentation showing their plans. Then, in economic survival, students have been learning about the basics of economics. The definition, different types of economies, traditional, market, command, and mixed, supply and demand, as well as goods and services. Then their math classes are starting the STEM mini unit, Surviving Physics, which they will be doing every Wednesday this trimester, with a focus on physics and the advantage of simple machines.
Students on Moose Island are learning about perception, both visual and mental, and the media. In one class, the students are learning about photography, in another about how the brain perceives objects and emotions and how it makes judgments. And finally, CGI is the main focus as the students learn how it works and ponder if it's making movies better or ruining them.
Then when the Royal team finished off the trimester strong with debates about sports, presentations about sports, and some students sending letters to newspapers about their opinions. With the new trimester just starting, the Royal team has picked paranormal as their overall theme. Their 3 core classes are horror through history, which they'll look at things like the witch trials and ancient torture devices. Supernatural phenomenon, where they learn about how electromagnetic fields tie into paranormal, and they will look at famous movie scenes and learn about what is happening in them. And a monster class, which they will create their own monsters. They will learn about monsters that have been passed down forever, like chupacabras, yetis, Bigfoot, and they will also be coming up with their own definition of a monster.
On Sebago, they're working on outdoor game creations during their period 4 time. They're also doing wood burning activities as well as utilizing their workspace to build outdoor games that students will be able to use. They have also been collaborating with the high school art alternative program to work on the planning process for the challenging course that they will be renovating at times and creating at times on the Marantica campus.
And I think that's it.
School-wide.
No, I did that.
Oh.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, hi everyone. I'm Ella Stevens. Fortunately, Dana Reynolds is usually the other person that comes with me and reports on the high school, but unfortunately she couldn't be here with me tonight. So all the events that's going on in the high school right now, spring sports have begun. And tennis has their first match next week, I believe on Thursday, which is quite interesting considering that we're still shoveling off the tennis courts currently. SATs are at the beginning of next week for upperclassmen. Juniors took the MEA tests today. The math team had a math meet yesterday and they placed 10th. The German students returned from Germany last Saturday, and they overall had a very good time as far as I could hear from all the students. They had a very positive experience. Mr. Albert, who's the music teacher here at the high school, along with 2 other students, Gabe Jones and Dana Reynolds, are headed to Pennsylvania for the All-Eastern Music Festival, which is going on today, tomorrow, the next day, and over the weekend, which is super exciting to send 2 representatives from our school to All-Eastern. The outreach committee is working on an Easter egg hunt for the school when we return from April vacation. So we'll hide all the candy and stuff before vacation, then we come back, we can have a big Easter egg hunt. The health advisory committee, along with the peer mentors, have been doing presentations on drug and alcohol awareness to all the freshman advisees in the school. So they came in and there was, I believe, at least in my advisory room, they had 3 students presenting a slideshow with statistics and different interactive components for the students just to spread awareness about drugs and alcohol, which was very informative. Broadway night is on May 10th, so everybody's very excited about that. I think it should be a good time. And students are preparing for the All-State Music Festival that is going to be happening in early May. You.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much today for coming and sharing all the wonderful news happening in our schools. If you guys want to leave, you may, or you can stay for the duration of our meeting.
See how it is.
Do we have any additions or adjustments to the agenda by the board or the superintendent?
I do have one that I'd like to add as 5H, which is simply a follow-up on NUIA results. There was some discussion last board meeting about it, so we do have some more information that we'd like to share with you that's in your packets. Nancy Harriman is unfortunately not here today, so I will do my best to try to explain everything that's there, and if there are still follow-up questions, we will follow up with her as well. But I thought it was important that we bring that back to this meeting, so that's the only adjustment I have.
Anyone else? Okay. Citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens' comments today?
Yeah, they're right here, but
Okay.
if there's anyone, now's the time, so.
I guess not.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of March 27th, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? That's everyone, yeah.
I make a motion that we accept donations.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
I make a motion that we authorize of the Austin Bear Society ABS Courtyard project.
Second.
And do we have any discussion?
So just very quickly, I do have Sarah Firth and Ron Gifford here if there's any questions about it. We did bring it to the Facilities Committee, who endorsed it. The Austin Bear Society is looking at doing some fundraising, and they've already kind of lined up some work if the fundraising all falls into place. But they are here if you guys do have any specific questions about that courtyard project that they're looking at doing. Are there any questions for them, or?
Well, I'd like to hear it again, maybe a refresher for
Yeah.
the people watching and.
Ron or Sarah, do you mind just talking very quickly about what your proposal is around the courtyard project for the board?
First, thanks for having us and for looking at this project. We really have a courtyard concession project, which is one phase of the project that we're proposing, that we're evaluating. In that project, basically, we would do some renovations on the current concession. We would be constructing a new building that's basically butts up against the slope of the tennis courts on that end. In that building, we would house both male and female restrooms and some additional athletic storage in the other portion of that building. In between the two buildings, we would be forming kind of a courtyard, which when the school was first built, that area was originally thought of as kind of an outdoor classroom courtyard space. I think it got used at times, but probably hasn't been used in quite some time for that sort of matter. And the courtyard would be framed, obviously, by the two buildings, the access road on the other end, and then between the two buildings, we would create a some sort of a wall with a columned gated entrance, which is really kind of now an access into the athletic complex, so that when we have events where you would have actually charge a fee, championship-type events, you'd have a controlled access point, whereas right now it's kind of mishmash as to what we can do down there. So all flow of people into the complex, instead of going around the concession building now, would be aimed through the courtyard. Part of our fundraising process is the courtyard will be ideally fully paved with pavers, but engraved bricks pavers, as well as using the columns as another highlighted space for engraved recognition of those who are donating. This is phase one in what we hope to be a 2 or 3 phase project. Obviously, this is in comparison to the full project, relatively small, but the other pieces that we're looking at are expanding the current 6-lane track to an 8-lane championship level track, so we could actually host championship events here, which would be revenue generators, and implement a artificial turf field inside the track that would be lined for field hockey, lacrosse, soccer, and football, and with expanded lighting to be able to use that entire facility from 2:45 till whatever time in the evening you'd like to end access. And really looking at this as a multi-community, not just our RSU. Winthrop has tried to get a track a couple of times over the last 20 years that I know of. Can't get anywhere. They have obviously a good track program. They do come over here once a week maybe and use our facilities now. And we are reaching out to them and other communities to see whether they would be interested in being part of this process. In addition, we're looking at expanding the current Nordic Trail network system, adding some snowshoe and hiking, walking trails, and potentially adding a second building or in addition to that building, which would be a outing club community access building, where potentially we would have pairs of snowshoes and extra pairs of cross-country skis that people could sign out and use for the day and use the trail network.
Wonderful, fantastic. Does anyone have any questions? Well, thank you so much for talking with us about the project. It
You're
sounds
welcome. Yeah,
wonderful.
basically, at this point, we're just looking for authorization to keep moving.
Well, on that note, all those in favor? It looks unanimous. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I make a motion that we accept the teacher resignation effective June 30th, 2019, Victoria Adams, Wayne Elementary School.
Second.
Any discussion?
Do we have a resignation letter?
Yeah.
Donna.
We do have a letter, it's not in the folder right now, and I think it's okay to say that she is resigning because she's starting a family, so.
All those in favor with regret? It's unanimous. Thank you.
So, yeah, these are second. So I make a motion that we vote to rescind policy EFE, competitive food sales, sales of food in competition with the school food service program.
Second.
So just a reminder, this was a procedural error on my part. When we rescind a policy, there does have to be 2 reads, and I had jumped the gun a little bit and done a first read. So this is just a procedural thing, and it was an error on my part, so.
Could you remind us why we're
Yep.
rescinding
The
this?
state no longer has, it was part of a rule that was there in the law, or the rule has been changed, and most of that policy has migrated into our student wellness policy. So it's not like we really lost anything, it just kind of migrated into a different place, so.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? All those in favor to rescind the policy?
And then first readings.
And then the next thing on there, because again, you're not going to have to vote on it, but ACAA, which is the harassment and sexual harassment of student policy, is up for a first read. So if you have any questions on that policy, please do not be afraid to reach out to me. Oh, excuse me, I jumped ahead of one, I'll come back to it. But if you have any questions on that policy, feel free to reach out either to myself, Dr. Carr, or Ms. Brotherland, and we can make sure we get your questions back to the policy committee. And that is the same thing for policy BDF, which is the Board Advisory Committee, which is a new policy, again, up for first read. I won't repeat everything I've just said there, but please reach out if you have any questions about those policies.
Everyone good? Yeah? Okay. I make a motion that we adopt the revised RSU 38 organizational chart.
Second.
Discussion?
So what has changed?
Question?
Yeah.
My question is, what is the revision? What was it like before?
You're talking about the
organizational
our
chart.
organization. Hang on just a second, I'm going to scroll to that very quickly. So it hadn't been updated in a little bit. So we did add in that there's a principal, a full-time principal now at Manchester, full-time principal at Reedfield, and that the third principal position is split between Mount Vernon and Wayne. We also, at one time, had a dean of students, and now we have an assistant principal. So those are really the basic changes there from the past policy. So those are the major changes, and it's just more to say, this is what we currently have versus what has been, I think it was 3 or 4 years old at least. So we just wanted to make the changes. And it does say in our board policy that the organizational chart come before you guys for a vote, and those are kind of significant changes, so I thought it was important to put it out in front of you guys, so.
Any more questions? Okay. All those in favor?
All right, so then the addition that I have, which is H, the follow-up on NUIA results. So this was originally published back in February, the first February board meeting, but unfortunately, some of the scores weren't ready at that time, particularly the K to 5, for various reasons. We had just finished testing. They had to be uploaded, reported to NUIA, so we didn't have the school-wide results that we have right there. So that's what I've got in front of you. On the first page, it explains, that's just basically a repeat of the report that came from Dr. Harriman in March. The second page is the updated NUIA results in both reading and mathematics. And then the third page is a distribution chart, because there were some questions about NUIA results and what it all means. So one of the first things I want to say is it's really important that when you look at a percentile score in NUIA on the front page, that does not say anything about the amount of questions right or wrong. Remember, what that's showing you is that is a percent that shows the number of students that scored that, I want to make sure I say this correctly. So it's the number of students that scored above others. So for example, if I'm looking at kindergarten reading, and I'm looking at winter 2019, it says the 55th percentile. That means 55% of our students scored better, higher than or better than 55% of people who took that test. It's a norm reference test. So that's what the percentile means. It does not have anything to do with the amount right or wrong. And that's really important. That's a really important thing to put out there. So then, when you look at that, you go, is 55%, so is that good or is that bad? What does that mean? So that's what the third page is all about, is that normal distribution curve that you would normally see. And Dr. Harriman actually kind of highlighted the middle, that yellow band, you'll notice is right around the 50%. So when you're looking at that distribution curve, you're looking at students that are falling kind of right where they should be falling, going anywhere from about 34% to 50%, and then 50% up another 34%. That's the normal distribution that you're looking for there. NUIA doesn't use the 34% as their low range. They use 41%. And then NUIA also uses 61 as their high percent. So it looks a little different, but I just kind of want to remind you it's a bell curve that you're looking at. So you basically want your students to fall as close to 50% as you can. That shows you that they're kind of where they're supposed to be on the national average on that norm part of the test. So going back to the second page again, for example, I'm going to use grade 2 reading just as a start point. If you go across and you see the 37th percentile, the next box over you see 62, the 62nd percentile. Remember, that's actually their percentile in first grade. So then if you follow that over one more time, 62%, that's actually from kindergarten. So it's following the same cohort across. Now, one of the things that people are going to say is, wait a minute, it looks like they're going down. So there are a couple of little nuances here that you want to kind of know about. So in kindergarten and first grade, students use headphones and they plug in and the test is read to them. Whereas at second grade, that's the first time they have to do all the reading on the test. They have to do everything themselves. So it's basically like taking a new test for them all over again. So we typically see a dip that will happen there in that second grade test. or in that second grade testing window. So then why do percentages drop as you go through? And I have copies of this if anyone would like to see. So again, it's a nationally referenced test, and they use norms that go across. So when you score really high on the test, it's hard to show more growth on the test. So let's say you have a student that scores a really high in second or third grade, and they score really high, and they get like a 295. I'm just making that number up. They get a 295. That puts them at a really high percentile. But then the next year when they take that test, they're actually going to get harder questions because it's a self-leveling test. So they may actually drop a couple points, and it may only be 2 or 3 points that they drop, but percentage-wise, that can look like 7, 8, 9, 10% drop for that individual student. So then when you start averaging things out, it looks like, well, wait a minute, our percentage dropped. What we did, what Dr. Harriman did, and you don't have this at this point, but one of the things that she did is she went back and looked at the raw numbers versus the percentiles just to see, okay, what's going on here. And one of the things that we find, for example, I'll use third grade math this time as an example. When they were in, I'll go third grade math, which shows 40%, and then 46%, and then 53%. When you follow that backwards, it actually shows that the average RIT score went from 185 up to 195, but it's actually a percentile drop. It looks like a percentile drop. So our raw numbers are showing that we are seeing growth in our students, but the percentile and the way everything matches up, because it is a chart, and I've got that chart right here if you want to start going through. When you look at that chart, everything is norm referenced, and that's what they follow when they're putting this together. So it's not an easy, quick thing. You do have to do a little bit of analysis to kind of get to what you want to see. There are some things that we definitely have to take a look at, and I think that's what this test, we do have to own the data that's there, and that's what we have to show is, okay, so when we see little hiccups and we see percentiles that are a little bit off, we need to then ask those questions. Why is that percentile off? What's going on with this particular class? Is there some other factors that may come into play as to why the percentile doesn't look as good as it did the year before? So it's not a simple analysis with NUIA. I wish I could say it was, but it's definitely not a simple analysis. So having said that, I don't know if I did Dr. Harriman's presentation justice there, but certainly I can try to attempt to answer questions, and if I can't answer the question, I will write it down, and we will make sure Dr. Harriman gets a response to you as quick as possible here. So, having said that.
Are there any questions? Kathy?
This isn't a question, it's just a comment. I think we have to be really careful when we're looking at this and what we're using it for, because number one, it's a one-shot deal. It's one assessment over, a lot of assessment that kids are getting. We need to really look at other things than just this before we're just saying, oh, see, we're not doing as well as we should be. And because this is a complicated method to really analyze this data, we as a board have to be really careful and knowledgeable about what it is we're looking at when we're making any kind of a decision based on data. Because this is one small piece of data.
Right. And thank you for saying that, Kathy. And this test takes place in the month of January when the students are returning from their holiday vacation. So it is really important to kind of note that as well. I guess the tradition has been we look at winter to winter, and we are coming back, and all the students that take this K through 10th grade are coming back from a vacation. So, and the month of January can be sometimes tough coming back like that. So we do have to acknowledge that as well.
Any more questions?
Does Nancy's data break down by school as well? I would assume that's probably.
No, we don't break it down by school. We
Don't
look
break it down by
across,
school.
we look across the entire district,
The
yeah,
reason I ask that is just because when you have the combined classes in particular,
Right.
does that,
right.
have an impact?
Yeah.
Because you're not able to
Yeah.
get to some of those losses.
Right.
In the last meeting.
The only class in the past couple of years would be that 4 or 5 in Wayne.
right.
And again, fourth graders take the fourth grade version, fifth graders take the quote-unquote fifth grade version, I guess is the way I would say that, so, yeah. And what's really interesting is the way NWEA does it. If you get a score of, I'll just use the score of 215, it compares your growth to other students that started with the score of 215. So you can't say, like, a second grader, every second grader's looking at that. Bridget might have a score of 218. She's compared to all the others that start at 218, not at 215. So they do try to kind of statistically be able to account for that, but the fact of the matter is, it's based on what last year's score was. That's what they're looking at for your growth moving forward, so, yeah,
Versus the MEAs are more,
right. Just grade specific,
grade
right,
specific,
exactly,
that's right.
yep, yep,
thank you.
yep, those are good questions.
Betty?
Probably I think it's a more important question is looking at the individual scores and who is not making progress, the progress that they should be making, who are going down from what their predicted growth is. And that's where I think RTI comes in, and your RTI teams come in. And so looking at these, while they show one thing, more important is the work that's going on with the principals and the teachers with looking at individuals.
Right. And
And that's what
identifying,
this
right.
test,
Yeah.
and that's what this test allows you to do.
Because it is a growth model, so you want to, and that's exactly what Betty just said, you want to be able to target in who are the kids that need these intervention services. We've invested in literacy and math interventionists, so this really allows us to hone in and say, who are our most needy students that need this service and need this catch-up at this point, so.
I have a quick, how quickly do kids get the attention when the numbers start
Yeah.
flatlining or going down, I mean?
So I think I can say with fairly good confidence that there seems to be at the elementary schools about a 6-week window that they're watching these intervention services and evaluating where the student might be at the end of that 6 weeks so that we can get students in and/or dismiss students as necessary. So it's kind of a rolling process, but they generally use about that 6-week window as a way to do that, which is about a month and a half of services to be able to say, is it making a difference or is it not? Do we need to go further into like a tier 2 or tier 3 service for these students?
Kathy?
So I have another question. So this is actually used as like a screening, and then other assessments are given to students. Just because a student may not do well on this particular assessment doesn't necessarily mean that
That's
they
right.
need interventions. There needs to be other assessments, the common assessments
Yes,
and the other
yes.
assessments that the teachers are giving to determine who needs intervention. So they don't necessarily
That's right.
go
Yeah,
from
that's
this
exactly
score
right.
right into
Right.
interventions, because there's a
Exactly.
lot of other things that are being,
Yes.
that are happening in between
Right.
there.
Right.
That leads me to another question. We do have kids moving in and out of the school system, correct?
Yes.
How does that affect, hugely, that affects our scores as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's something we don't control a whole lot. But I'm going to use Mount Vernon as an example. Last week, we talked about there being 18 students going in to kindergarten next year. Just in this week's time, it went from 18 to 21 projected for next year. So that just goes to show, like, and if that happens during the testing window, yes, it affects our data, without a doubt.
Betty?
Are you still able to give new students the NWEA test anytime?
They can only take it during the open windows. NWEA has a window, and you have to take it during that window that it's open. So Usually, like a lot of schools now are sending their NUIA results with their students, their most recent NUIA results. So that way we at least have that. Not every school does, but the ones that do, we obviously use that information.
When we first started, we were able to, if we had questions about where someone was, we were able to give them the test. It didn't go into the window, but at least we knew where that student was. We could access the NUIA anytime. I don't know if that's, I mean, that was, what's that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That was a real quick way to screen someone new.
And for those people at home, just very quickly, the response was that we use the other assessments to help us out, so.
Patty, did you have a question?
Can you remind me, I don't know if you can, Jay, are the NUIAs aligned with the Common Core and therefore with our district curriculum?
Yeah,
So, I mean, we know that there have been many years where tests like the MEA have shown up in front of a child who has never been taught the material on the test before. And I just want to say that if the NUIAs are kind of like that too, I want to echo what Kathy said, that this is one point in a picture of a kid. That's all.
I have a question.
Because it might not be showing growth from
Right.
what they've learned at school if it's not aligned with what they've learned at school.
Have any of the board members taken the NUIA? Because I have too.
Well,
not
I had years
officially.
ago, but years ago, but yes, it wasn't pleasant.
Well, Nancy had a link that she sent to us. I don't know if that was last year.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if she could send us the link. It's only 10 questions, but it really opens your eyes to what the kids have to do. And some of the questions are several steps and have multiple answers. So
Yeah, that'd be good.
could you see if she could
I
send
will
it to us?
absolutely, yes, I'm sure she can do that.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
No, absolutely.
I have
You
a
have a
question.
question? Okay.
The MEA scores
Yes,
for last year, right? It takes a year for them to be
yes.
processed.
Yes,
When will we get last year's scores?
that is a good question I will have to look into. I don't have an answer for that
Okay.
right now.
Okay,
So you're talking about the MEA scores for the
18, 17, 18.
17, 18, okay.
And actually, if you could go back 3 years too, that would be awesome too.
Yep.
3 to 5.
Yeah, so that would be 16, 17. Okay, good, I got that, I will get that for us.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to look at that just in terms of, like this third and fourth grade class, which
Yeah.
obviously are the ones that are sort of in the lower average element.
Yep.
So it'd be interesting to see that dynamic, because third grade stands out, but. Oh, sorry, I thought I was.
Use a couple.
Your own personal microphone.
Any more questions or comments? Okay. Moving on, we're going to talk budget.
So, switching gears, give me just one sec. Put that aside and, oh, right here. See, I had this all organized and now I'm not organized. So, just a couple quick things before we get into the actual numbers. What I brought back was the first classroom configuration I put back in your packets. I didn't do any other configurations just because I didn't get a very positive feeling from the board. And I'll be very honest, and I didn't want to stir more up by trying to put these crazy configurations together. So we kind of went back to just that class configuration number 1 is what we worked off of going forward here. So then I also sent out information to the board through email around combination classrooms. Again, you can go online and you can find things that are very positive and very negative. So the things that I looked for were kind of the things that were in the middle, so that you guys, if and when you had time to look at that, you could kind of make up your own mind about how it swung. So I looked for those kind of middling ones, not all positive, not all negative, but in the middle. So those links went out to you also. I think there was 4 or 5 links on that particular page. And then that brings us to our numbers now. So the first page that you'll look at is the general school fund summary balance, 4th edition. And again, if you go down to the grand total line, you'll notice that if you go all the way across, we've got it at a 3.56% increase at this point. That reflects the following things, just so that you know. The administrators were fantastic. I asked them to go back and take a look at various cuts they could look at in their current budget and how it would affect going into next year. So they were able to find, able to find monies that they were willing to cut back on. They did a fantastic job. That's not easy. I commend them on doing that because nobody likes to have to give anything up. So they really kind of took the bull by the horns there. We did reduce painting also. We didn't get rid of it altogether, but we certainly cut back on it as much as we thought would be reasonable. The keyless entry, we also removed the keyless entry. We, in special education, in special education, the new program that Ryan is proposing, the BCBA, I hope I said that right. He proposed cutting it from 4, it was going to be 4 days a week. He thinks he can move it down to 3 days a week as a way to give us a little bit of savings also. We had a slight reduction. We got our number 2 oil and diesel bids in, and we were able to get a slight reduction in that also. And then the biggie that came in today was the health insurance did come in, and it came in at 0%. So we were able to basically take out 7% there. So that's kind of how we got to that number of 3.56%, which is, in my opinion, first time through this, that's kind of like a, wow, I think we did a really good job, and I don't want to sound like I'm patting myself on the back because the administrators were instrumental in being able to make this happen, so, and my directors. So it was, I feel like that's a really good number. It was a lot lower than I thought we could get to, so I think we're in really good shape personally, looking at it from my first experience here. So at this point, I guess we open it up to questions.
So any questions?
Oh, and I will, just very quickly, I apologize. So the the second sheet in that's green is the revenue side, so that you can see the adjustments going based on that new number. Remember, that represents that new number. So you can see the adjustments. I'm not going to try to go through all of those adjustments on the first page and or second page. And then the page 4, 5, and 6, again, lists out all of the changes that have taken place in the budget, what's still in the budget in that 3.5%. And then if you go to page 6 of 6, you can see all the reductions that were made going across there. So that's kind of where we are. So I know it takes a few minutes to kind of absorb all of that. So as you're looking, I'll let Mrs. Brotherland kind of direct the questions that come up from this point forward.
Any questions, comments?
I just want to thank the administrative team. This is awesome. I know it's really hard to do this, so thank you very much for the work that you've done to get us to this point. And I still have a question about what's going to happen in Mount Vernon with the 21 kindergarten kids.
So we do have an answer for you on that. We do have a Behavior Ed Tech 3 that was in Mount Vernon this year. So we will change that into a regular Ed Tech 3, and they will be put right into that classroom as an assistant for that 21
Full-time?
full-time.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. I knew you were going to ask that question.
Betty?
At this point, you said that we were looking at number 1,
Yes.
so,
Mike, whoops.
sorry about that. In Wayne, are we looking at double classrooms?
The only combined class would be what we currently have, which is the 4 or 5. I just kind of went back to those configurations and also planned for that extra teacher that was requested in Manchester because of the bubble class that's coming in. So,
Okay, good.
Any more questions? Comments?
Yeah, just a reminder that next week we'll be voting on the budget, so hash it out now.
yeah.
We can still hash next time.
Next
Sean,
time,
do
we
you
hope
ha-
it's a Band-Aid.
Do you have any comments or anything?
Nope.
Adam?
I still think that the 5th grade, splitting Reed Field, the 5th grade, I just think that's, from what I've heard, that's a very unique class, and it needs attention. And then I could really, the maintenance custodian, another person to mow lawn, it's just, that's not needed.
Could we hear from Mr. Boston maybe about that classroom?
That's up to you. If you'd like to ask him.
Mr. Boston, could you tell us a little bit about the classroom that Adam's referring to?
Right, so I don't have the numbers I had when I presented, but that class, when they were in kindergarten and first grade, were 2 classes of about 12 in each class, 12 to 13. When they got to 2nd grade, they ended up combining. They were around 22 or so. 2nd, 3rd, and currently where they are now is 4th. They've got as large as 26 in there. It's not the number. It's the needs within that classroom that Adam's referring to. If I remember right from my numbers, out of the 22 that are in there right now, there are 14 kids that are receiving some type of service, whether it's special ed, math intervention, literacy or Title I support, or social emotional support. And it's a very needy class. And they were, back when they were younger, when they were split, it was more manageable to help them and provide the support. As you were talking about the NUIA numbers and everything and identifying those kids at risk, they got the attention. If you put, like I do with my own children at home and with their teachers, if you have an hour class and you have 22 students in that class, 14 or so need certain support, you're probably about 2.5 minutes per person. It's not a lot, because you got whole class support, then you have your guided instruction, then you're expecting students to go off on their own or with a partner and do some of this work. Not to mention if you're already struggling in math or you have a social emotional issue that might interrupt class as well. So I've been asking the board for this position this is my 3rd year, and I haven't gotten anywhere at this point. But I'll be honest, this is a needy group, and going into 5th grade is crucial. It'll be their last year with us before they go to middle school, and we really want to close the gaps as much as we can before they get there. And I think if you look at our numbers are healthy enough that with that additional teacher, that position would stay on through the following year, because we would have double classrooms We're either 18 to 20 in every class. So it's not like a one-year position and then it's gone. It would be something that would stay for a while.
So you expect that this might be a definite need for next year?
It definitely is. Yeah, that was when I presented my budget to the superintendent, that was my top priority, was getting another teacher so I could break that class up and give them the support they need. That was my top priority.
Yes, Kathy?
So I'm just wondering if 14 out of the 22 students are getting some kind of service, who and when are they getting that service? Are they all in the class all day together? Are other people coming in? Are they pulling them out for the services? How's that all?
It's a combination of, depending on the content, but there are kids going in and out throughout the day. If they're receiving Title I support, oftentimes it's a pullout. Math support, it could be either one. I know our math interventionist has gone in there and worked with the teachers and helped the kids out that way. Social emotional is based on when we can have those services in our, as you know, within our building, whether it's with Kennebec Behavioral Health or through our guidance counselor. So unfortunately, there's a constant move and shift where they're all going in and out throughout the day.
So would you say that most of the time, all 22 are not in the classroom together at the same time?
I would say it might be reduced by a couple of kids depending on the time of day, but it's not going down significantly where you got 12 in there or 15. Yeah, you might have 2 that are going out, and then they're coming back a half an hour later.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Betty?
Do any of those students have Do any of those students have ed techs assigned to them?
If they're within special ed, they could, where there's in-class support. But I don't want to narrow down the numbers just about because
Oh, I don't expect you.
Yeah. But there at times there could be. Currently, because we did take the regular ed tech out to support our third grade students, there hasn't been consistent support since January within that class. And the teacher is doing the best she can. She's working very, very hard.
You have a regular ed, you have a regular education ed tech for the building?
Correct.
And
And guess where that person has been the last 3 years?
I don't know.
With that class.
In this class?
With that class.
Okay.
I could use, and at times I've had to pull that person because of other needs, at the lower elementary, but I haven't been able to give that the proper support because that has been my neediest group at this point. So that's where my support has been.
Any more questions?
Just one other one. It seems like that ed tech swing person, if you will, is a need at a lot of the elementary schools. I think Manchester could use one as well. I would offer probably, if we were to speak to each of the principals, we'd have a similar type need, if you will, to make sure that kids can get where they need to be and they can get help in the classroom or what have you. Would having an ed tech in this classroom, I mean, I mentioned last week that in Manchester, the 5th grade has 23 kids in it, and I remember a couple of years ago, parents after parent saying we need this to be 2 classes, and they didn't get their 2 classes at that time either, but they do have a full-time ed tech. And so, I mean, I don't want to open up this can of worms, so to speak, but at the same time, if there's a need at those 2 schools for those 2 large classes, then maybe that's something we need to be thinking about. I think that's something I certainly would support if we were to go down that path. More of a statement than a question.
A full-time ed tech, you said?
If they've lost their swing person as a result of this, then there's a lot of, I don't want to say suffering, but there's a lot of needs within the school that are taking place. And I remember us talking about that swing person in the past and how that was such a great thing to have, but when you lose that, and you act as that role then, probably sometimes.
But I'd also attest that there's no replacement for a classroom teacher having that additional support. I mean, the ed techs are very important, but at the same time, when you can take a larger class and make it a little bit smaller and give the kids that individual attention. It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Any more questions or comments? No?
This isn't a question for
Okay.
Mr. Boston, but it's on the topic, so do you want me to wait till?
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Boston.
Thank you.
So I'm hearing that that class really needs to be split, and I would support that. I still do not support the additional custodian to mow the lawn in the summer. And I'm thinking, if we took that position and put that money towards another teacher, then that would help with that situation.
I would second that.
So I guess I want to be careful with just be clear on the custodian piece. It's, right now, currently in the budget, we have a 6-month custodian that works basically in the summer, spring, summer, fall months for mowing. What we were looking at, and this is Mr. Drinkwater's request, is bringing them up to full-time so that he basically can keep doing his job. There's been a lot of interruptions in custodial staff for various reasons that are nobody's fault, but that's where his request came from. So I just want to just kind of be clear that it's just not mowing.
Right. And I do understand that, but I'm going to go back to say that I think our money is best spent the closest to the kids that we can get.
So, I'm hearing from the board that perhaps we should look into doing just that, because we're here
Squeezing
for
it
the
in.
kids.
Yeah.
And every classroom is a little bit different, just like Mr. Boston said. I am going to kind of go back to something that was stated. We do have a class this year that ran in Manchester that did have 23. So I think we just have to be very cognizant of the fact that we might be setting a precedent here moving forward. Again, every class is a little bit different and the needs are different and such. I just, kind of have to look at it as a big picture and just say, remember, we did have a Manchester class this year that ran with 23. But I'll do whatever direction the board gives. I just want to be careful about setting precedent, and I think we've got to be careful about what's a magic number, so to speak, to split a class, so.
Betty?
To go along that line, and I agree, we need to put our money closest to the kids as we can, but we also talked about the kindergarten at Mount Vernon being up to 21, and so that so I understand that there's an ed tech there to deal with those kindergarten kids whom we don't really know their needs at all. We're talking about 22 kids with high needs. I think you all just need to look at the equity, at the needs of the kids, and come back to us with your best proposal.
Just real quickly, do we know how many students in the 5th grade class in Manchester had those social, emotional, and math and reading support at this point in time, similar to that?
This year, right now?
This year, right now?
We can certainly get that number for
That'd be
you.
interesting
Yeah.
just to
Yep.
see, because I just know those parents would be on the phone with their Manchester delegation if that were to be approved, and not that that's a bad thing by any means, but I think we need to be able to have a good explanation for that.
Patty?
I hear Mr. Boston saying that he's been talking about this particular class for years and attempting to be proactive without much result. And it makes me look back at the sheet, which is page 6 of 6 of the reductions, and it's not only the classroom teacher from Reedfield reduced, cut, but the Ed Tech 2 and halftime guidance. And I think that every school, we want equity, and I totally agree with Betty and Kathy about we want to have the funds go nearest to the kids that we can. I think in addition, we have to just start somewhere. We have to start somewhere, and it looks to me like seeing if we could go back and change the halftime maintenance, maybe plus something else, and I'm trying to figure out what that would be, and move things around a little bit to try to get that next teacher, an additional teacher back in at Reed Field might be really great.
Anyone else, questions or comments? Yes.
Just looking over the budgets that we've done the last couple of years, if we have administration coming to us and asking for a teacher for the classroom, and as a board, we think we somehow know better than that bothers me as far as approving the positions that we've approved in the couple of years since I've been here. I mean, we have a computer integrationalist that makes a very good salary, much more than a teacher would. And that person isn't going to be around those kids every day. And I think that was a position where I didn't realize the impact that person could have on just watching, talking to the teachers and how, like, making them ready for middle school. That was a pretty cool position, but as far as taking that over a classroom teacher or taking a literacy coach or anything of that over a classroom teacher, that's not something I'm willing to do. And I think that anytime we have, it doesn't make sense to me that we would not fulfill the needs that, I don't think our administration is greedy with requesting teachers. I just don't feel that way. And I respect Jay as far as not wanting to set a precedent, but I think that as a community, I think we have a lot of faith in our administration as far as going with what they think.
Jay, do you think you have some options to explore?
Yes, I do. Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. Yep.
And they'll be ready for next week?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Great.
Then, let's see next week.
Okay, excellent. So, moving on. Thank you.
Oh, do we have any citizens comments?
What? Yeah. Oh, wait. Where are we now? Citizens' questions. Are there any citizens' questions on budget? And we already did deliberations. Now we're going to reports.
So tonight, I should say it this way. I told the principals they didn't have to give any formal report tonight, but if there's any questions about their reports that were included, we can certainly either answer them now or get the questions written down and get information back to you, depending on what those questions might be.
I have some questions. Kathy, you want to go for it? Okay. I wanted to start with the middle school principal, and I wanted to ask start with the world language year-long program. And I was interested, it says, the World Language Department will offer year-long classes to all MCMS students. And will this be optional, or where every child's supposed to do it, or just the ones that just want to, or will kids be able to opt out of that?
Dr. Levac, do you mind answering that? No, should I go there? Yeah, please.
Mr. Boston's like, yeah, you better.
So it's set up so every student will have it in their schedule. We know that there's some students that it's just not the right time for them to have it. And so they'll have different structures in place that will be a very individual basis. So we might have some students who are really need extra RTI support, so they may be in that system or something like that. But the expectation is that all students will have it, and one of the reasons for that is because kids can learn languages easier the younger they are. So we're trying to help prepare them for the future, so they have some language under their belt by the time they come up here.
So how will it work per class? Will the sixth graders get to sample them and the seventh and eighth graders do a year? How does it work?
So on yesterday, actually, all of the world language teachers visited all of the elementary schools and went into all the fifth grade classrooms and gave a little taste of what all the languages are like. And then they chose, and they thought it was very fun. But and then the kids and the parents will choose their top first and second choice. It used to be like this, from what I understand, years ago at the middle school. So I'm not sure how it will fall out. From my understanding from teachers who used to be there is that it usually worked pretty well so that kids got their first choice. But I don't know what that will look like yet because parents have until the 4th for this incoming sixth graders. Parents have until the 4th to put in their scores.
So the sixth grade will get a full year too, just like seventh and eighth. So there'll be
Right.
an option of 3 full years then?
Yes.
Oh, that's good. Now, what about the little, what do you call it, where they do a certain number of weeks during?
So-
Language is still going to be plugged in there too?
No.
Okay.
Well, it's weird. They kind of are.
Oh, okay.
So UA, so they call them UAs. and
UAs, that's what it's called.
So UAs will be every other day. So say their UA period is period 4, they will have that every other day for the entire trimester instead of for 6 weeks. And then every other day, they will have their world language
Okay,
class.
all right, so go hand in hand, and then they won't be doing all the languages, just the one they picked?
Right.
Okay, okay, great. So when they're done with that, the eighth grade will have how many years of high school language then?
The way it would work as of right now is they take a test called the AAPPL or the APPL, a bunch of letters, but so they would take that assessment and depending on how they did, would say where they're going for what grade or into what level for the language.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so there's no really, like, it's a year and a half, or it's a year, it's
Right. It
whatever
would be
their
wherever they're.
test says.
Right.
Okay.
And then the other piece that we are, which is fair for kids to do, so they could take Spanish for a year and then decide, I don't really like Spanish and want to do French. So they also have that option. So in talking with the fifth graders yesterday, they're like, I want to do all the languages. So we'll see what happens.
Kathy, you had a?
You all set?
I'm done with the language. I had a few more questions.
No,
on
keep
the-
going.
Okay, let's go to habits of work then. I had some questions about that. Let's see, what was my questions? So you said standards grade, which I'm assuming is 1 to 4 grade for habits of work. So how are the students going to get feedback for habits of work? How is habits of work now going to fit into things
So for this trimester,
this trimester?
For this
Okay.
trimester, they're putting it in 1 through 4. Advisors are supposed to check once a week, or at least before the grade check it, go in and go over those scores. And then what teachers are doing is having kids do reflections on their habits of work and then responding. So if a kid puts in their habits of work and does a reflection and said that they're all 4s, but they hadn't turned in any of their work and they never brought a pencil, then it would be a discussion with the teacher and the student
Okay.
to talk about it.
And it doesn't affect anything else, sports or anything like that?
Not now. We're talking about it tomorrow at the staff meeting, or at the professional development day, so one of the things that's on the table is to look at doing it like how the high school does it now, with having habits of work be for eligibility for
Okay.
next year.
So the middle school is really they're kind of have jumped into this and they're kind of doing a pilot right now. So that's why it's there, so that you know about it, so that they can kind of figure out and see what works, what doesn't work, what do we need to adjust, what do we need to change, what do we need to keep, what parts are really working well. So that's kind of where they are right now, is they're trying to figure it out, and they're using this last part of the school year as their pilot, and it doesn't directly affect students or take anything. It's not punitive for them in any way. It's more of a learning opportunity for them. So.
My next question is about proficiency-based education update. Starting in August 2019, you will be using the proficiency grading scale to report academics grades, which I'm assuming is 1 to 4, correct?
Yes.
How how is all this going to work? How is this going to work? 1 to 4, okay,
So 1 to 4. Part of it, I'm not trying to hesitate, part of it is hard because we're talking about it as a staff tomorrow. So during that professional development day, we're hoping to kind of figure out the nuances of what the grade book will look like. We want it to be really clear, so parents know exactly where their kids are at. We want to make sure that the 4 is attainable, because
that
that's
was
really
a big
important.
question for me.
Yes.
It will be attainable? 'Cause-
Yes, and that's actually been kind of a cool part of this whole process is staff have talked a lot about, okay, how do we make that 4 attainable? Because something that, for whatever reason, the message has become that you get a 3 and then that's it. But we know we have kids that are working at the level, working at a 4, and we want to make sure that they can continue to do that, so.
So that would be a good way to get this, help students stand out from their peers. Which is
Yes.
something I've been
Yeah.
reading about a lot. Now, you also mentioned honors and high honors, and without a GPA, we won't have the National Honor Society. So how are you envisioning honors and high honors?
So just very quickly, there's no
Please
National
mention
Honor Society in middle school,
Okay.
right? So I just want to be clear about that. That's definitely a high school piece. So I don't expect Dr. Levac, obviously, to address that piece of it.
I was
So-
just commenting
Yep,
on what was
from
here,
that-
though.
right,
Yeah.
right,
So I can answer.
exactly. So this
yeah,
is
for honor
talking
roll.
about what the honor roll looks like at middle school, so.
So right now, and I'm sorry to be so vague, I really want to make sure that there's staff input in this whole process. So right now, we have about 5 options that are written out, and we are discussing them as a staff at that PD day tomorrow. We have a very busy PD day with lots of things on the schedule. But some of them include just habits of work, some include looking at, like, for every content area, they're at a 3 or they're at a 4, depending on what that looks like. So we want to make sure it's the right thing for kids. And so I just want to take it to staff to make sure that we're all on the same page with that. And just along those lines, I'm going to put out just a welcome. So on April 25th from 6 to 7 p.m., it will be in my newsletter too, but we are going to have a proficiency-based education night at the middle school. So any more questions and everything can be answered then for parents too.
Okay, well, I personally am glad to hear that 4s will be attainable.
Thank you.
For kids.
Yeah.
And I just want to commend Dr. Levac for kind of jumping into this. And I know we had a discussion about this earlier on, and one of the things, and I believe it was Sean that said, I like to know where we are. And so that's why I think it's really important that Dr. Levac, I'm just using the middle school, she's not the only one, obviously, but it gives her a chance to kind of do some work, pilot test some things, start to communicate with parents, so that next fall, when people come in, it can be very clear as to where are we in this process, what are the things we're doing, and we can give a full report to the board about this is where we are. So, it's really important that she has this time to kind of pilot test things and work with things and get staff input, which I think, and I know Dr. Levac agrees very much so with this, that we really do need to make sure that the staff has buy-in to what's going on and start to communicate with parents. So I think she's doing a fantastic job, and she's obviously not the only one that is kind of working through these things. But thank you, Dr. Levac, for answering the questions.
Yes. And I'm not trying to jump on anything. I really want us to work on this piece of it, so then next year, what we're working on is the instructional practices and the differentiation and the kids that are on each end of that spectrum. And so I really want to get all of this piece of the grading system done and clear so we can go there. So.
Does anyone have any more questions? Kathy?
Mine's not a question, it's just a comment. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the detail that the principals' reports have in them. The information is really phenomenal. And in addition to that, the things that are happening at your schools are so impressive. Reading down through all your reports, I just kept going, wow, this is really, wow. So thank you to you and your staffs for your reports and for all the wonderful things that you're doing in your schools.
Patty.
I do have a question, but I think it's for you, Jay. My question about PBE at the middle school or anywhere is, how is this planned? And I'm not saying this with any, I want to do what people, staff want to do, but how is this related to that committee that is supposed to, I thought nothing was happening yet in terms of action because a committee was exploring what was best for our
Right.
district, so I'm wondering what's
Right, so
up with
through that committee, we kind of got to a point where we felt like we needed to be able to turn it over to the principals and give them a chance to start working with their staff and start having discussions and start trying some things. So that's kind of what the last meeting was all about, was we kind of made that decision of move forward. We are, like, what I basically did was gave them 4 weeks to give them a chance to have conversations with their staff, start to develop some plans, and then they're going to come back in May. When we scheduled our next meeting was at the beginning of May, so that they had a little bit of time to do some of the legwork on these things and start to kind of develop the plans, so, yeah. But they kind of needed time to go out and have discussions and stuff, so, yeah.
I did have one other question. So when it comes to the middle school's trial run, how is that going to kind of integrate into the high school? Because, you know, you have the middle school to prep them for the high school. How is that going to flow?
Dr. Conway and Dr. Levac are having conversations around things like the how, to see how that's going to kind of flow together. So, yeah, they are communicating. It's not just the middle school's doing something and high school's doing something different. They are having conversations so that they can line things up. And that's the whole goal. The end result through this, as we evolve through it, is it should be very seamless, going from not just 5th grade into 6th grade, but 8th grade into 9th grade and on up. So that's the goal here, and we just need time to work through those important pieces to have that kind of connective tissue there. So, good question.
Because the elementary schools have been doing this for a long time anyway,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Is that,
Yep.
so that, I mean, and that just is going to flow right into the middle school, so it'll be more like a K through 8 and then working to, okay, that's, thank you.
So,
Actually, I have one follow-up. So if the trial run doesn't work out, we're still retaining the option to remain at the default?
I'm not sure I understand that question,
Well,
but
like-
I guess, like, the reason why they have time to work on this is so that they can figure out what works and doesn't work and then adjust for it accordingly. I don't think it's we try something and then drop it and walk away from it. I think it's a matter of a continual kind of growth and evolvement of, we keep the stuff that works, the stuff that doesn't work, we get rid of, but we keep kind of growing it forward and looking for how do we tweak it and move forward. I think I would be really, really hesitant to say, well, we tried it, we did it for 6 months, it didn't work, sorry, we're done. I think that's kind of not where we want to be right now. I think we want to grow it and build the system for our students going forward.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a good question, though.
Oh, the agenda?
I have one more, too.
This has nothing to do with the principal's report. This is the staff association
right.
survey. I don't know if there's anyone here.
Oh, I think
Hi.
Cheryl.
Cheryl.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions about it. How many people were surveyed? How
I
many
need to be-
responded?
Really clear on that, because we were remiss in not reporting that it was a high school survey at this point for the Maranacook Staff Association.
Okay, that's a
And
high school?
This was a high school summary, and we would be more than happy to send it out to all the schools. And if there's any edits different questions that you would like to have reported on.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt for just a second, Cheryl. I have to be careful. Are you speaking for the association
I
right
am
now?
speaking for the association.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you, Cheryl.
Yes, I need that I'm speaking for the association.
Thank you.
At this point, thank you. So it was sent out after Jay came and talked to the high school on March 15th, because we wanted to come to some consensus, because he'd given us some things that he would like us to look into. And so to highlight some of them, really coming to a common definition of PBE will be really important because we don't have one at this point in time, according to the survey. Then how we keep track of standards, which you just mentioned, especially between the schools or among the schools, making sure that students are really prepared when they come up to the next level. Making sure that we could reach students at all levels with the proficiency-based, where those standards are set. The really good things that came out of it were that people are really enjoying the across-the-school discussions on curricula and how to help students move forward, that people are very much engaged in that. And then we had a really good discussion with the leadership team. Well, I wasn't part of the leadership team, but the leadership team had a really good discussion about what the graduation policy was going to be, because and they came up with a draft, and the whole staff voted on it. And I think that's what was driving more us doing the high school, because we were really focused on what are we concerned about for graduation. So again, I'm sorry that we didn't send it out to all of the different schools. So that part, it was a unanimous vote, and you will be seeing that eventually on there. Proficiency, again, was over all the place. It was unanimous that jump rope was a problem for all of the high school teachers and how to use it and at least how it's being currently used. Since then, there have been travels to Poland High School to look at that and see how they're doing it with some ideas of how to tweak that. But that was another one that was unanimous for people that they were struggling with how that was being used. Since the survey, and the other part, the grading scale, the majority of the teachers were interested in a 0 to 100 scale versus a 1 to 4. There were some that didn't really care. They were fine with a hybrid. Since then, there was a second survey that was just focused on the grading scale that was done by the administration, not by the teachers, and it only included 1 to 4 options. It could be 1 to 4, or it could be 1 to 4 and 0 to 100. So it looks like we're going to 1 to 4 as directed.
So if it was a high school survey, how many people responded? Out of how many?
23 out of 38 responded.
And were these the questions?
They were the exact questions that were
Okay.
on the survey.
Okay.
And when they gave just the survey for looking at what kind of grading system, I don't know, evaluation system, assessment system, that was the only question on there. So if there's some really focused questions you would like us to ask, I think this was a little long, and maybe that was why people didn't want to respond to it. I'm not sure. But we did at least have over half the people respond.
For a survey, that's pretty good. Really, but, thank you.
Does anybody else have questions?
Go ahead, Pat.
I have a question for Jake.
Okay, I have a question for you. You said that the high school is going to 1 to 4?
That's
even
what we've
though
been
this-
told, yes.
So when I spoke to staff March 15, I had the mistaken assumption, and I shouldn't have assumed, you guys all know what that means, that jump rope was a program that could support a traditional grading system of 0 through 100. Using jump rope really only supports 1 through 4, and I only found that out after the fact. So that's a mistake on my part. So if we're going to go and use jump rope, and I think now that they visited Poland and other things, I think we do have to take a serious look at 1 through 4 and use it within the context of jump rope. That being said, I also do believe that we can reverse engineer a scale going backwards to account for classes like a dual enrollment class or an AP class, where you really can't report out as a 1, 2, 3, 4, but you can take a score and convert it back to this is a 95, so that you can report it out to for a college, or report it out, like in this case, dual enrollment is with Thomas. We would need to be able to give Thomas that information. So I do think we have to reverse engineer one as well. So that was a mistake on my part. I'm going to own it. I've been learning a lot about jump rope, I'll be very honest, a lot about jump rope. So it continues to evolve, and I'm attending the jump rope users group so that we can make sure that as we're working forward with this, that we can make sure it actually fits what we're trying to get it to do. And I think we just need to do that as part of, we have to do kind of our due diligence and look at that and see, can we make it work for us? We'll kind of go from there. Yep.
So I guess I'm unclear. Jump rope, when did we start using that, and why do we have to stick with it if it's not going to work for us?
So I don't know what year, because jump rope started before I got here, so I don't know. Has it been about 5 years, give or take 5 years, somewhere in that neighborhood? So the elementary schools have been using jump rope, and I feel like they've been fairly successful with it. And this isn't kind of a knock against anyone. I feel like it stalled out when it got into middle school, and people were unclear, do we use it, do we not use it? And I think that carried up to the high school. Quite honestly, they would look at it and say, well, if middle school's not using it, why would I want to use it? And it's set up for, I'll be very honest in saying, jump rope is set up for the for the elementary schools right now. And I think when it was set up, people were trying to figure it out, and they thought, this is going to work K through 12. And we now know by visiting Poland and having some conversations that it's the way it's set up for elementary is not going to work for middle school and high school. So I think we have to do some due diligence and say, can we get it set up for middle school and high school? And I know teachers are frustrated with that because they were kind of dictated to, you are using this program, and for whatever reason. So I think that's really, really important that we give it an honest effort and see, can we build it for the teachers? I totally get that they're frustrated with it, but I don't think we've actually given it a fair chance. And I see Diane over there.
I just wanted to make
speak.
one clarification.
Yeah.
The high school really has given it a fair try. We've been actually trying to input the grades and evaluations, assessments, whatever. It wasn't that we were ignoring it. We've actually been working with it for 3 years.
And I agree with that,
So-
Cheryl. I don't mean to
Because you said
make
that
it
we
sound
kind
that
of
way,
pushed
right?
it to the side.
No,
We
I just-
really have
yeah,
not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize. So if it's okay, Diane, will you step up to the podium?
If you have any more questions, just.
Okay. Thank you.
So I want to just talk just really briefly about the way we were using jump rope in the past few years is that we did have a dual system. We kept the proficiency-based very pure. We had standards, common assessments, and then we had the regular classroom stuff going on. And there was a reason for that. Because if we felt like we were going to have to certify students with proficiency report cards and that thing, we felt like we needed to be really clear about what we were assessing, that it was purely standards and not habits of work, not homework, not, things that weren't directly connected to standards. So that was a decision that we made as a district a long time ago. Now we're reevaluating that. We're trying to get to one system, we're trying to move forward, and that changes our focus with jump rope. What we have been doing with jump rope needs to change, especially for the high school. And so as all of this is coming down, we are looking, like even in I'm in the jump rope support group too, and I'm talking to other schools who have been doing it differently. And let me just tell you, even in all the other systems, everybody is doing this differently. So, it's complex, and there was a lot of pressure when we were first started to really be able to certify proficiency at a graduation level, and we took it super seriously. And so that's why we were making those decisions, and it was a decision that was made, with the administrative team, and so for what that's worth, that's how it sort of got together. The units were put in at the middle school and the high school for English language arts and math first.
And then the other content areas were starting to be put in as well. So it's been a long process. But we do recognize that things can change, and we do want to have them change. And the state changed. Let's not forget that. So,
Again.
again.
Do it again. I have a question.
Do you want Sheriff? Or for
Diane.
For Diane.
So jump rope is an outside entity, like a corporation or something, a programming? Is it a program?
It's
or
a
what
piece of
is it?
software.
Yeah.
A piece of software from a corporation. Do we pay for this? How much does this cost a year?
I'm going to just defer all those questions. Like I don't have, I'm not the business manager.
I can get the cost
You know,
for you, yes.
and I don't want this to be you firing tons of questions about jump rope. I just wanted to give a quick, overview of where we were.
Okay.
And where we're going. And if you have any other questions, you can write them down, and
Okay.
Nancy and Jay and, everybody else. But I just felt like I wanted you to get, the background all. That's
Okay,
all.
thank you.
Thanks.
Any more questions? Yes, Patty?
This is more like a statement, but I'm concerned because, again, I'm going back to, I think I'm repeating what I just asked you, Jay, but the committee that was coming together to look at whether or not, what we would or wouldn't do with PBE in terms of philosophy, grading system, reporting system, I didn't think was taking any action. I thought it was exploratory and then coming back and for more discussion. And I am just concerned that now we're in it makes it hard for me to have faith in exploring jump rope. Like, can we make this work for us? Is this really a question? Are we really going to explore that, or are we not exploring anything?
So I guess I'm going to answer that by saying there's a little sense of urgency here, because right now, according to the policy for RSU 38, we have to certify proficiency for the current sophomore class moving forward. So there's a little bit of urgency that just having discussions puts us into next year, and these students are now juniors. And I think at some point, you've got to start to experiment, to try things. But if we wait much longer, I feel like it's going to come back to, well, what have you guys been doing? And if we're just talking, continually talking, I think you've got to start to try things at some point. So and I'm kind of a person that's like, okay, jump in, let's get going, and let's start to figure this out. So I didn't feel like I needed to give the principals some time to go back, have these conversations, but it couldn't be just at a committee level. It needs to happen with other people also. And we have to empower our teachers and our administrators to start to do this work in a positive way that accounts so that we can straight-face say, when the students, the sophomore class, gets there, that we figured it out for them, and we can certify their diplomas. So,
I totally understand that, and I'm a jump-in action kind of gal myself, but I think and I don't disagree with anything you just said, but that's very different than what we have previously heard from you about this committee and about PBE in general.
fair enough.
I think I'd echo those comments of Patty. I mean, it seems like we were going to get more information. Now this stuff is just happening. I mean, I know you will work hard, but I've heard on this issue from more teachers than I've ever heard from. And it seems like you do have an issue at the high school level and a lot of work to do. 23 teachers out of 38 who aren't happy with this, that's problematic. And if you're trying to implement a system, it seems like it's being force-fed. And I think that's not the direction we received. It was going to be, we were going to get more info. And it seems like this is happening. And policies aren't made to be changed. If it's not working, policies get changed all the time. Let's not force feed something and have unhappy teachers and students who are feeling, this is the grading system now, you're a guinea pig for this grading system. I mean, things have changed enough. I think we need some continuity and kind of...
Well, I want something to report to you, Sean, and I feel right now, if we don't do something, I'm not going to have anything to report to you. I've got to have some flexibility to be able to let things happen and develop as they go along. I want to report something to you, but right now, all I can say is, we have a policy that says sophomores have to be certified as proficient in language arts, math, science, and social studies. How that's happening, I can't answer that question because we haven't had those conversations where they need to happen. This is opening that door to be able to have those conversations. I know that's tough to hear, Sean, but if
No,
we
I don't think it's
don't-
tough to
yeah,
hear. I
yeah.
think it's, you have teachers who aren't, if the teachers aren't buying into the system, you're gonna fail.
Well,
And I think you need to get buy-in from the
yeah,
schools.
I do have and I want to commend
And
the.
jump rope isn't working, and you're trying to force feed something that's not working.
Yeah.
In the
I
back, did
understand
you have
you
a
want
question?
action, but.
So Jay, what is the policy that you're saying that's the urgency for 2021? I don't understand where
It's
that's
the
coming from.
graduation policy, I believe it's IKF.
Is that something that can be repealed?
It's not repealed. We have to have a graduation policy as part of our school. And the high school has given some recommendations that I plan to bring to the policy committee. But that's a process, and that's not something that you repeal in one sitting or two sittings. It's going to take a little bit of time to get to that place. But I do have it. The high school has done some work. The teachers have provided some input. I have to then take that input and apply it to where do we fit in the law and what do we need to do. Our policy has to follow the law. So I need to see what those recommendations are, see how it applies to the law, then bring it to the policy committee, who will then bring it to the full board here.
But there's no longer a law that says we have to do
Right?
PBL.
But our policy hasn't changed at this point yet, so we need to move on this policy.
Not if it's a policy that the teachers don't support and the parents don't support. So that there's not going to be a board discussion or vote on this policy at all, or this topic, or teaching methods?
The answer to your question is yes, there will be a vote. It will come to them as they come through. So at this point, I'm going to respectfully ask that we have this, if you'd like to have this conversation with me, that you set up a time in my office. This public forum is not the time for this conversation. So thank you very much.
Kathy?
So I just want to make sure that I understand, and I don't know if it was Cheryl or who said this, but I think, in my understanding, and I could be wrong, that the survey that the association did was given prior to the visits to Poland and some other work that the teachers have done. So I'm just, and from what I've heard from some teachers, is that some of them are looking at things a little bit differently after getting more information.
Cheryl knows. Cheryl, do you mind answering that question
No,
about
I
the
don't mind
timeline?
answering. That's true. The survey was done before they went to Poland. And, but we haven't, as a faculty, talked about what people came back.
You have not? Is that what you
Inspired.
said?
Well, we haven't talked about what that's going to look like.
Right, okay,
That's after that, it was the 1 to 4 and Poland, and
right. That was
We-
my
yeah.
understanding. So that survey was done before that visit happened.
Betty?
You can, I guess this is a statement, you can keep things in a committee level, but until it gets out to the school staff, administrators, teachers, to really have those hard conversations, I don't think that we can we can't revise the policy, we can't repeal a policy, we can't put a new policy in place until those hard conversations take place. And so I think I think what's happening is that it's gone kind of from the small committee back to administrators and and teachers to have some of those hard conversations. Is that correct, Dwayne?
Yeah, we're definitely having hard conversations.
And it's not simple. It's not a simple conversation, and so I think we need to give it a chance, and letting the process kind of work with the principals and the teachers, because that's where it's all happening. Not at the committee level, it's happening at the school level.
All right, Sean, last question.
I guess, I mean, I don't object to that, but I just don't want to get to a point, it kind of, we had this, we're going to have a committee, we're going to get more information. Now things are happening, and I don't want to get to a point where it comes to, oh, we have, to, like, it's happened numerous other times, we have to vote, or we're going to miss the deadline without any input. And I don't want that to happen with this. I feel like we're getting vague answers on things we've asked. We asked last time, I asked for an update, well, we can't give you an update, is what I was told, because a committee's gonna meet, and now that committee's long gone, and now we're into this phase. And I'd like updates. I've asked for that multiple times, and we haven't gotten updates. Now we're into this phase of it, and I apologize if I misunderstood the survey, that maybe teachers may be a little more happy, but I think we need more updates, and I don't want to get to a point where we're going to vote on this tonight or the next meeting. And I don't feel that's happening, that we did not get that from the last time when we asked for it.
So
Do you want me to get the one person back there?
I would discourage it at this point, just because it's not a public comment time, but that's your call as the chair.
Okay. Mr. DeAngelos?
So I would certainly, I'm Steve DeAngelis, I teach at high school. And I certainly understand Jay's sense of urgency and maybe impatience about this. I'm a fairly impatient human myself. And I think the thing that I think has to be said is that and Cheryl referred to this when she spoke, is that the staff, in cooperation with the leadership team came with a proposal to revise the graduation policy. The staff voted unanimously on that. We reached consensus on that. There are a lot of difficult conversations we had, but that's one that we did have very successfully, actually. And the staff was very pleased about that change. And so I think that we are going to recommend to you a difference, right? So what it seems to me is that while with that in the offing, if we're really concerned about being able to certify that the possible need of our sophomores being able to be certified as having a proficiency-based diploma, there are lots of ways to do it that don't require us. I mean, we have been working on jump rope for a super long time. Diane's correct, it's complex. It's not easy. I'm not very excited about the idea of a complex grading system for parents to have to understand. If we're struggling with it for 4 or 5 years and trying to make it work, right, why do we rush that? It is possible. Yarmouth High School right now is doing proficiency on a 0 to 100 scale. 70% is proficient. They're certifying their students that way. I'm all in on proficiency. I think we should go that way. But I'm not all in on rushing the grading and trying to make jump rope fit when, in all honesty, folks, that is the least intuitive system I've ever seen in my life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, what's next? You want me to
No, yeah, we can go into executive session if you guys are.
I make a motion, we go into executive session to discuss labor contract negotiations between RSU 38 of directors and the Marana Cook Area Staff Association and Professional Staff pursuant to MRSA 4056D. That's rough.
Second.
And we're going to move over to concentrate.